Welcome back to another video. Let's find out who will win between the European badger and the Atrociraptor. Really quickly, I'd like to apologise for not posting in a while, but just know there will be more content in the near future, and yeah, enjoy the video. But as per usual, we've got to answer the main three questions that we also do in our other fighting videos, but you should definitely go check out, by the way. This being, who and what are our characters, where will they be fighting, and what type of battle or fighting style will we be doing in this video. Let's hop right into it, starting off with the European badger. The European badger we're using today is the European badger Meles meles. The Meles meles is the most famous of all the European badgers due to its iconic black and white face. It also has very long nails, being able to reach upwards of 2.5 centimeters, being basically an inch long, and it can even get bigger. These claws are used for digging in what we call sets, which are like groups or pods of different burrows of badgers, which can reach up to 10 or 20 plus amount of badgers, which is another reason why the European badger in specific is a very famous animal. Overall, not just the species Meles meles in particular. They're also iconic for having very strong jaws, which I did try to find the bite force of, but it was very hard to find, and I eventually just gave up. I mean, I did search for about half an hour to an hour and I just couldn't find it. But the European badger is also famous for another thing, being very stocky in terms of its build, almost built like a pancake, but more or less like a stack of pancakes, being very flat but very beefy. And for this one we'll be using max estimate sizes, as, you know, just to make fair, I'll use the best version of the Atrociraptor and the badger, so they both got as fair as a chance as possible. And for this one in specific, I'll be using a male badger, as male badgers have known to be bigger and stronger than the females, roughly being twice the size sometimes of a female badger. So it's safe to say that the male badger in this case, or the badger Meles meles, is going to have a good chance against its opponent, the Atrociraptor. But let's move on to the Atrociraptor. The Atrociraptor, like many other dromaeosaurids, is very famous, mainly due to its appearance in the Jurassic World Dominion movie, not being the newest movie anymore, which features Red, Panthera, Ghost, and Tiger, the four Atrociraptors in the movie. It's also famous for having a sickle, which is why most dromaeosaurids are pretty popular, apart from Utahraptor, he's just massive. The Atrociraptor doesn't have any sickle claws or any claws overall fossilized as far as I could find, but it has an estimated sickle claw length on its toe, the big toe, to be around the same size as the badgers, if not slightly bigger, with the estimates of the other toes being smaller, as in terms of the size of the claws. And the claws on its hands, or on its fingers I should say, are probably around the same size as the badgers, if not a little bit longer, as they did need to be sharp, if not even smaller, as it's just an estimate based on other dromaeosaurs, so there's really, you can really say anything and it could be true as long as it's not too small or oversized. The bite force of the Atrociraptor is unknown, as I couldn't find any real study on it, but it was most likely less powerful than the badger, which apparently was 99 newtons. It took me a while to search for it yet again, because I just couldn't let it go, but I eventually did find it. So the Atrociraptor is most likely a quick, nimble predator, and would just sneak attack, I suppose you could say, and dig its sickle claws into its victim and just bleed it out, or stay on top of it and bite to death, which would be another way of bleeding it out. So the Atrociraptor is definitely a far and enhanced evolved killer, with its full scientific name being Atrociraptor arshili. But now comes the question of where will they be fighting, and after a lot of time and consideration, I actually came down to a conclusion, that being the UK. On probably a warm summer day for the Atrociraptor to feel at home, I suppose, you could say, as they would probably live in a warm environment, but in a place with enough grass and trees, and maybe just a grassland with trees nearby, so the badger also feels at home as well. This will be a new environment to the Atrociraptor, that's sure, but it'll give it a lot of area, and I'll give it some time, I suppose you could say, like a couple of days to get used to the environment. Just to let you know, I suppose. So with that out the way, just before we get into the stats, we need to talk about how we'll be doing it, and in what way we'll be doing the video, to determine who would win in a fight. Well, it's pretty simple. Within our fighting layout, we will be using stats like speed, strength, agility, flexibility, overall senses, overall combat, IQ, battle experience, weight, size, intimidation, balance, coordination, stamina, adaptability, durability, endurance, healing, abilities, and weaknesses and fear. If you end up getting weakness and fear, you get points taken away. But if you get any of the others, as if, for example, abilities or durability, that adds points. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. But before I do that, I will be saying how the fight would go, as explained earlier. So, as mentioned, let's start with stats. And first up is speed. Who was faster? Let's start off with the European badger, Melis. Its top speed estimated, and recorded, I should say, is around 25 to 30 kilometers per hour, but it could probably just go over that limit with maybe 31 to 32 kilometers per hour, but that's really pushing it. And looking at the dromaeosaur family, most estimated guesses put dromaeosaurs around 30 to 35 kilometers per hour, sorry. And that's for the smaller dromaeosaurids, which probably comfortably places a Atroraptor in the same area, around 30 to 35 kilometers per hour. It doesn't look like speed's going to be a huge advantage, but it does seem that in terms of speed in of itself, not stamina as a category, but speed in of itself, it seems that Atroraptor has more stamina and can keep up in terms of using that speed more than the badger. But that's not overall stamina, that's just for that one little bit. So, let's move on to strength, now that we know that the Atroraptor takes speed. Next up is strength. And why do I need to answer this question? It's obviously the badger. Whilst the Atroraptor is strong, it could most likely push half, if not a third, of what the badger could. And the badger's going to have a lot of beef, and as mentioned, it's built like a tank. More completely different to the Atroraptor. It's built more like a swift killer. It's like comparing a bulldog and an oversized house cat. In terms of this category in particular, the badger takes it. Now, next up is agility, and this was very hard, as mammals are naturally agile, and the badger is no exception to this, but dromaeosaurs in particular are built to be the agile dinosaurs of their family. And it was really hard to decide, because both of them have different agility types, I suppose. The badger is closer to the ground and uses his body limbs to bounce back and forth, and the raptor is high from the ground and uses his speed for his agility. And I've come down to a final conclusion. Mammals are naturally agile, but some are less agile than others, but are still built to be agile in terms of their overall structure. While dromaeosaurs were built to be agile compared to dinosaurs and were agile for dinosaurs, but didn't have the bone structure needed to be as agile as mammals. So just for the fact that a badger is a mammal, the badger's just going to barely take agility. Although if it was any bigger or more clumsy, or it wasn't built in the way it was, it wouldn't have taken it, but obviously that's not the case. So the badger just barely, but does take agility. Next up is flexibility. And it is actually pretty close, as raptors, yet again, were built for flexibility at the time, and mammals are naturally flexible, and just as it's the same for agility in this case, the badger's going to take it just because it's more built for, flexibility. Really quickly, I'd just like to mention to remember to like and subscribe, check out my other videos, share, and please comment, as any comments will be in a future video, as long as it's about being in a video. But please, at any time, just comment and I'll make it into a video. I have a long list of videos coming up, but yeah. Back to the video, I suppose. Next is overall senses, and it could be close in terms of smell, but apart from that, it seems that the badger takes it. As dinosaurs aren't known for having good hearing, as they didn't have proper ears, which means they couldn't signal out from a specific direction, and it just seems that the badger has everything over the dinosaur in this case, as mammals are known for having good senses, as we needed them to evolve to become the top predator. As dinosaurs became the top predators because there was nothing else left to outcompete them, apart from post-Dasukians, and post-Dasukians were pretty slow at the time, just bigger build. But mammals, we also had to evolve from, the death of dinosaurs, but we lived alongside dinosaurs. So, yeah, the badger takes it. Next up is overall combat. And whilst it's really close, as badgers have a unique amount of things they capture in different environments, or fight in different environments, all over Europe and some parts of Asia. Yes, Melis does live in some parts of Asia, as well as its other European badgers relatives. But the Atroraptor just had so much more its size in its environment, and badgers did live in, pods, as mentioned, with each other. Atroraptors just came up across more things in their lifetime and environment. Remember, badgers are omnivores, Atroraptors are carnivores, which means they'd be forced to scavenge and hunt. So just because of that, I'm just gonna barely give it to the Atroraptor, but count the Atroraptor lucky that I'm giving this to him. Next up is IQ. And whilst IQ was going to be close, as both were intelligent creatures for their time, considering their size, it's most likely just going to the badger, as both are pretty intelligent, but mammals overall have better cognitive abilities, as well as bigger brains in general. So, badger takes it. So, next up is battle IQ. And whilst badgers are very good with fighting overall, we know this as they fight each other's siblings, and do when they're older. They also have to kill some things like rabbits, for example, just to satiate that bit of them that needs the protein. They also eat worms and other things like that. But the Atroraptor is used to fighting multiple types of creatures, from four-legged creatures like, say a baby Edmontosaurus, I'm just putting one out there that they used to live with, or to a baby Albertosaurus. Sorry, it's the only two that I can think of that come straight to my head when I think, what did the Atroraptor live with? But the Atroraptors had many different types of opponents. Badgers are used to four-legged animals, apart from humans and the occasional bird, but that's really about it. So just because the fact that the Atroraptor is more used to fighting more diverse things just to survive, let alone thrive, I'm going to give it to the Atroraptor, just because of its amount of different competitors or foes it would have to face just to live from day to day, I suppose you could say. Next up is battle experience, and to be completely honest, I'm just throwing experience in there with it, just due to the fact that there's one that holds a big advantage over the other. See, badgers are usually seen to live between 7 or 5 to 10 years, and there have been recordings of some European badgers living up to 15 years at their oldest. And Atroraptors at their youngest would be 15 years old before they'd perish, at least based off Velociraptors, which are smaller, so we can even predict that Atroraptors would live for even longer. So overall battle experience, just because their experience overall, would go to, the Atroraptor. So in terms of experience, of battle experience, the Atroraptor takes it with no difficulty at all. Moving on. Next up is weight, and this was surprisingly close given the scenario and builds of these animals, but due to one being long and tall and the other one being, thick and thin, I suppose. Not thin, short. Thick and short. It was pretty close, with the Atroraptor being 15 kg, which was kind of expected, but badgers usually only being around 13 kg at biggest in terms of specific times of the year. But when needing to fatten up, they can reach between 15 and 20 kg, but really it's 17 to 18 kg max. So it's actually pretty close, and kg means kilograms, by the way. But I think just because we're using max estimates for these animals, the badger takes weight. Now, overall size is usually measured using, you guessed it, weight. But due to the fact that we used weight in its own category, we'll use size in of itself in terms of length, height, and width as its own thing, I suppose you could say. And it's not that close, with overall width, length and height put together, the Atrociraptor has 3.2 meters to its name, whilst the badger only has 1.55, at largest estimates here, by the way. So whilst it would still be pretty close, the overall win for this category is going to the Atrociraptor, mainly because of its tail and its length. Next up is intimidation, and whilst it would be close, the Atrociraptor is much more skinny and it's just tall, which is going to be a little bit, threatening to the badger, but they're overall the same height. The badger's just a lot thicker, which is going to scare the Atrociraptor a lot more than it's going to scare the badger. So in terms of intimidation, the badger wins. Next up is balance, and balance is pretty close, as both of them are built to be good at balancing, one for running and one for just overall being heavier, and therefore it's going to the badger. I mean, the badger can go on 4 feet, and if the Atrociraptor tried that, he would snap his hand ankles. Did I really just say that? I meant wrists, sorry about that. But badger takes it. Next up is coordination, and it doesn't easily go to the one I'm about to say, but it does go to the Atrociraptor, as it needs good coordination to not hurt its limbs, as its limbs are fragile compared to the badger's, and it also is easier to break in different areas, such as its hand ankles, as mentioned earlier. No, I definitely did mean wrists, by the way. The Atrociraptor is definitely taking coordination, due to the fact it could also see well in the day, probably, and badgers are more nocturnal, or the other word I can't think of, that means that they can see, or well, they come out near the end of the day and the beginning of the night. So just because of the fact that that's the badger's role in the ecosystem, the Atrociraptor will take it. Next up is stamina, and the Atrociraptor takes it for 2 reasons. One being it's on 2 legs, which means it can slow down and go faster. Not as easy, but it can use less energy. Yes, I know that using 4 legs and 2 legs are basically the equivalent of using the same amount of energy, but usually you do end up using a bit more energy just because of the fact that you're using 4 instead of 2 legs. So that's one of the reasons, and the other one being that it's not only lighter but skinnier, so it's gonna be able to save more energy than the badger. But mammals are very good with stamina overall, so it was pretty hard to decide who would take stamina, as if it was a 4-legged Atrociraptor, it would end up going to the badger. But as it's 2-legged, obviously, and doesn't have hand ankles, it's going to go to the Atrociraptor. Next up is adaptability, and it isn't that close due to the fact that they're going to be in UK and on a hot day near the end of the summer going on to the winter, so that the badger makes sense why it's fattened up, it's just getting ready early. The badger's just going to take it because of the fact that it's the UK, as mentioned, and they're good at climbing, they're good at burrowing, they don't mind between swamps, plains, forests, whilst the Atrociraptor had a very less diverse environment in terms of its, environment, not including the diverse animal species, as there's probably more but in terms of animals back then. So just for the fact of based on where they are and how well the badger actually does do well in its environment across Europe and Asia, the badger takes it. Next up is durability, and this would be close if it wasn't for the, badger having fur and blubber. It's basically just got infinite durability compared to the Atrociraptor. Sure, the Atrociraptor may have had some feathers, or maybe covered, but it still doesn't have the fat and other blubbery tissues on it, as far as we know, to compete with the badger in terms of durability, so the badger takes it. And next up is endurance, and it's the same reason why I'm giving the endurance to the badger, just because of the fact that it's covered in blubber, so it can take more damage and care less about it. It was evolved for this reason, as well as burrowing and other things. It's just adaptability. So sorry for the Atrociraptor fans, but the badger takes this one as well. Next up is healing, and long story short, because the badger has blubber, it's able to use its blubber to cover any gashes before blood clots need to eventually come and save the day. So yeah, badger also takes healing. Next up is abilities, and they both basically got the same, but badger's got more claws, and the Atrociraptor has one sickle claw which might aid it. And to be completely honest, the only other thing the Atrociraptor has over the badger is it can jump higher, but then the badger can also swim, and I guess the Atrociraptor can as well, but can climb, which the Atrociraptor probably could as well, but it could also dig burrows, and it just has more claws. So in terms of overall abilities, this also goes to the badger. And the next two categories, and the final ones, being fear and weaknesses, are put together because they're going to the same one. It's the Atrociraptor, and mind you, fears and weaknesses takes points away from the animal, not give them. So these 2 points are actually 2 minus points. And the reason why I'm giving them to the Atrociraptor is because badgers rarely show any fear or caution towards animals their size. And that's going for most species of badgers. Europeans are the most cautious, but they're definitely not going to be scared. And in terms of weaknesses, the Atrociraptor's just got skin and some feathers, whilst, as mentioned, badger's got blubber. So badger takes it. Atrociraptor takes it. So, as mentioned, let's just get straight onto the fight. But before that, please, I'd like to mention to remember to like and subscribe, to comment, as any comments will be put into consideration and will definitely become a video in some sort of near future, and to remember to share, as it helps a lot. And please just go check out my other videos that I've done, and do remember that there will be more content coming later on and soon. But with that said and done, let's get on with the video and the fight to come. The Atrociraptor, after being in this place for quite a while, feasting on insects and rodents that looked similar to the ones in his old environment, he's sort of warmed up to the place, and he's now looking around for his next meal. Not hungry, but just ready for a light snack, I suppose. He wanders through the field and he thinks it's a nice spot to rest, and that's when he sees it. The badger, the European badger, an amazing specimen for the European badger, and the Atrociraptor is also at its biggest, both being the biggest of both species ever recorded. And there it is, the badger awaiting for the Atrociraptor to move. The Atrociraptor slowly tilts its head, just trying to get a better visual of it, even moving its neck to the side just to see what's around it. And it's just more badger. The big, fat badger. And the badger is not startled, but instead it runs towards the Atrociraptor. The Atrociraptor doesn't expect this and tries to run through the grass, but due to them both having similar speeds, the badger is able to just catch up, as its agility and flexibility allows it to turn faster than the Atrociraptor would expect, leading the Atrociraptor to be bitten on the leg. The Atrociraptor squeals, I suppose you could say, or hisses in pain. We don't know what sounds they would have made, so this is just going off of movies and other references from paleontologists. And it tries to get the badger loose, but the badger does not let go. The badger thrashes around until its legs start to, not function. The Atrociraptor has a lot of trouble, and instead of trying to run it away at this point, he digs his other foot with the sickle into the badger's blubber. The badger, in panic, tries to let go, but his teeth are too far into the leg, and it just rubs the Atrociraptor across the forefinger with it. Eventually, the badger regains its consciousness out from fear, or more like pain, and is able to bite back on the Atrociraptor. The Atrociraptor can't do much but bear the pain, so the Atrociraptor goes with its hand claws as well and starts to bite it and try to thrash the badger around, but the badger's taking none of it. The badger keeps on squealing and biting off the Atrociraptor on its leg to the point that the leg comes off. The Atrociraptor is now bleeding and in a lot of pain, but the Atrociraptor still tries to somehow run away. The badger isn't letting it, and it pounces on the Atrociraptor. The Atrociraptor, in one last sort of fight, I suppose you could say, that's left in it, he bites the badger's throat, leaving the badger to be surprised. The badger tries to get loose, and he eventually does, crawling away. But he doesn't end it there. He sort of trots around the Atrocioraptor laying there in pain, slowly dying from blood loss. The badger, not knowing what to do, and also a little snackish, just goes over to finish it. The Atrocioraptor can't do nothing but watch as it's grabbed on the neck and thrashed around to the point that its windpipe and whole neck is dislocated. The Atrocioraptor's dead, and the badger wins. So, why did the badger win? Well, it's mainly because of one reason: his blubber. Because of his blubber, he's built like a tank, and the Atrocioraptor can't really do much against that. So when the Atrocioraptor tried to fight back, it couldn't do much. And because the badger is more likely going to be the aggressor, it kind of just runs towards it. Near the end, the badger does suggest that he's scared and starts studying the animal just before he goes in for the kill, but that's all it is. He's just trying to stay alive, and so is the Atrocioraptor, which is why he scared the badger a bit more than expected. And there was obviously a big gap in terms of their points, but the badger with a stronger bite force and a tank build was just able to overpower the Atrocioraptor. But what about the points? What was the difference, and how many points, and what points and strengths did the badger have over the Atrocioraptor? Well, there was actually quite a significant difference in terms of the points, with the badger having strength, agility, flexibility, overall senses, IQ, weight, intimidation, balance, adaptability, durability, endurance, healing, and abilities. With the Atrocioraptor having speed, overall combat, battle IQ, battle experience, size, coordination, stamina, weaknesses, and fear. But weaknesses and fear actually take away points, which is not going to be good for the Atrocioraptor. Although the Atrocioraptor did have some pretty key features in of itself, being speed and battle IQ, which was going to help it a lot obviously in this battle. Also with size, as it can lead to having some intimidation over the other, which allowed it to be a bit more scary. But the amount of points did make a very big difference, with the badger having 13 points over the 8 points that the Atrocioraptor have, and counting weakness and fear, which is 2 minus points towards the Atrocioraptor because he had both, it's actually only 6 points compared to the 13 of the badger. That's not that much. That's more than half technically. But the badger definitely doesn't take it easily, it's just not that hard for it. And in case you didn't know by watching my other videos, these are the difficulties they'll be going through. No difficulty meaning no difficulty. Anything difficulty means he barely did anything. Slow difficulty means it just took a while, but he eventually did win. Low difficulty means he just did alright, but he still ended up losing pretty badly. Bad difficulty, he did bad, just not as bad as low difficulty. Mid difficulty means, well, mid. If there were 2 of them, it would be more fair than if it was just 1. Big difficulty means just the same but higher. So does high difficulty, so does extreme difficulty. Draw difficulty means they draw, as in they both live and walk away, but one wins at the end. And blood for blood difficulty means they both end up dying, but before they died, one had the edge over the other, but they both end up dying anyway. So, how well did the badger do against the Atrocioraptor? Well, to be completely honest, I'd give it to a mid to big difficulty. He did end up getting hurt quite a bit and being bitten on the neck and other things, but apart from that, it really didn't do much. But it will take quite a while for his blubber and everything to recover from the attacks from the Atrocioraptor. So overall, the Atrocioraptor would do a fair fight, but it would be more fair if it was a 2v1 than a 1v1 in this case. And the Atrocioraptor would most likely be able to win then, but there's still even a slight chance for the badger to win then. So, what does this tell us? It tells us that modern day mammals are built beefy. This basically is the exact same outcome that we had for the grizzly bear versus Dilophosaurus video. They should definitely go check out, by the way. But apart from that, I guess see you next time, and goodbye.